you don't necessarily need a good real estate agent or a good broker to sell you a deal. You need a good deal. And it sure as shit helps if you have someone that knows their stuff, that's looking on your behalf. Welcome to the Dirt Podcasts. I'm Miles Solomon. Every week I share my perspective on commercial real estate and the business of trading dirt. Let's get into it.
Nothing in this podcast is legal, tax, or investment advice. It's for entertainment only, loosely inspired by real estate, and any resemblance to actual people, deals, or outcomes is accidental or aggressively fictionalized. Talk to your attorney, CPA, and advisors before acting on anything you hear.
All right, so today I'm going to do a little background on the multifamily deal that I've been trying to source. In the last 2 months, I've probably contacted 80 different real estate agents. And the reason for that is, for one, you're trying to confirm availability, obviously. But secondly, you're also trying to get some more context. So when you're looking for a deal, you are calling different brokers or agents. If you're trying to just get a little bit more information, not really about, because most information tends to be online, so not usually information directly about the property, but more information about the deal. What's the situation, if there is one? Why are they selling? Hints and clues from the broker, the agent, on how the sale process is going, how motivated the sellers are. So a big part of the last 2 months, while I've been looking for a deal that we're going to buy personally by the end of the year, has been talking to real estate agents. And I say real estate agents because that's what we call residential real estate brokers or agents. We call them agents. Whereas in commercial real estate, person that sells or leases is called a broker, irrespective of the license. So I've been calling real estate agents and talking to them. And I did talk to a few multifamily brokers that, all they do is sell multifamily buildings. I found probably of calling, let's say I called 80 people, I probably found 4 that were legitimately like professionals that had great information that, sell deals every day. And I told them, I said, look, this is a deal by personally. I'm not a multifamily commercial real estate guy. So, if it's a deal that you see somewhere, you bring it to me, you represent me. We don't need to represent ourselves, which is something that I've always done for multifamily or single family. If it wins the deal, having someone else represent me, then I'm fine with that. If you get $200,000 off the asking price, then I don't need a $20,000 fee. So I've been doing that. I found a few guys that we did get legitimately close on a couple of deals. But ultimately, I ended up buying a deal from another lead broker. So, you don't necessarily need a good real estate agent or a good broker to sell you a deal. You need a good deal. And it sure as shit helps if you have someone that knows their stuff, that's looking on your behalf, that's sending you legitimate deals and sorting through all the bullshit. That's super valuable. What's not super valuable is someone that's sending you stuff that's on Zillow or the MLS or whatever, and just saying, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. Like my girlfriend the other day she called on a property on Zillow because she's also looking at, we're thinking about maybe flipping some houses. So she's been calling there. And after the call, the real estate agent she talked to sent her a list of 60 properties, which was, I think, just like every property in the area. Or I don't know what the criteria was, but in any case, not one of them was like what we were looking for. So when we've been looking for this deal, we've been trying to find some brokers that are discerning and would send us stuff that's like actually what we're looking for. So we found a couple of those. And then, we ended up actually buying, we're in escrow as of Monday on a deal that went to market a month ago from another Lee & Associates guy. It came out on a Friday. I called him that Friday. I told him I was really interested, that we were looking for a deal, yada, yada. On Monday, I called him, and he said it was already in escrow. So when that happens, I generally call like once a week. And I said, I just check in. How's the deal going? Are you guys still in escrow? And week 3, week 1, he was, no, everything's good. We're still in escrow. Week 2, yep, still in escrow. Everything good. Week 3, buyers done some inspections. They are probably coming back to us for a retrade, the old shuffle. And then week 4, which was last week, he said, yeah, they asked for a retrade. Are you guys still interested? How serious are you? Would you be willing to write another offer? And I said, yes, we'll offer the same amount we did before, which was asking price, because it's a great deal. And we'll tighten our due diligence, and we'll have a 7-day DD, and we're still going to get a loan, but we'll waive everything else, including the loan. So just because you need a loan doesn't mean that you need a loan contingency. You have to be confident that you can get the money. So some of my best clients that I have in commercial real estate are guys that are willing to gamble or bet. Bet is more accurate word than gamble, I think. They're willing to bet that they can get a loan in the period that they need without a contingency, wherein if they don't get the loan, they lose their deposit. So in this case, it's a $2,050,000 deal. I put a deposit down for $61,000. I'm buying it with 3 other people. So we're each going to put in around $150,000 each, and we'll have call it a 30% down on the loan, and we'll finance 70%. And we have a week to do our due diligence. And the reason I did a week was because that's what I thought it would take to get the deal and to get them to bounce out of escrow, bounce the other guys out of escrow, and take us. Because normally what will happen is when you go back for a discount because of legitimate repairs, the owners will give it to you. But because we were confident and aggressive on terms, why is the owner going to take $50,000 off? If we're saying, well, the buyer already did the due diligence, we have all the due diligence that they gave you, we've reviewed it all, and we are okay with these risks. So a week is basically what I needed to do a physical inspection of the different units, and then have a little bit of time to go through the stuff. But so that was on Friday. It was looking like we were going to go into escrow. Sunday he called me to double check, and then Monday we were in escrow, and they canceled the other guys. So Monday morning I'm on the phone and I'm calling a couple lenders. The first thing I'm doing is looking for a lender, telling them, here's the deal, here's the link. I put it in a package, which includes our purchase and sale agreement. It includes, the offering memorandum for the deal, and then it includes, a bit of information about the buyers. So we did that, and I called, I don't know, probably 2 brokers that I know are very good loan brokers, and they do similar to what we do in commercial real estate, except they do it with banks. Their clients are borrowers and banks, and their job is to know who's got what loan package or loan program going right now, and finding and shopping and selling a deal for a borrower. So I called the 2 guys that I know really well, and I told them our due diligence is 1 week. We're going to be non-refundable for whatever, $61,000. We need to close by December 20th. And so I sent them each the package. They both called me back a few hours later, and they said, look, we put the word out. We're talking to different guys, but preliminary feedback's not good. Nobody thinks that they can do a year-end deal. Or they're saying best case they can do is maybe December 31st. So a big portion of why we're buying this building is because we need a year-end deal that we can get depreciation on. In this instance, for $2 million, it's probably, just call it 80% of the value could be bonus depreciation, where you accelerate all the depreciation into the first year. So on a $2,050,000 deal, we could take $1.6 million in depreciation and split it amongst 4 partners. So that's $400,000 in depreciation a partner. And the IRS is very clear. It has to be put in service the tax year that you're claiming, and it has to be done prior to the end of the year. So it has to be in service by the end of the year. So a closing date of hopefully December 31st, which is what these brokers were calling me back with, is not ideal, because if they miss it by one day, then that's a huge tax hit for all of us. I mean, it's significant enough that we'd probably do just about anything to avoid that. So by the end of Monday, it was not looking good. I called one of my partners. I told him, I said, hey, it's not looking good on the loan front. What do you want to do? And he said, well, who have you called? I told him, and he goes, oh, well, have you called Carlo? And I go, no, I haven't called Carlo yet, because I don't really want to bug him with a small deal. Carlo's a good friend of mine. Carlo Sampson with CDC. He's mainly like a SBA lender for small business administration, but he does other stuff as well, all kinds of conventional financing. But he's also, like, I think, the number one CDC lender. So I wasn't like really trying to bug him over this shit, but he's also a good friend. So I call him and I say, hey, nobody thinks they can do this deal. Can you, I just emailed it to you. Can you get back to me? So he calls me the next morning. He goes, hey, I talked to my buddy at Chase, and who's head of their multifamily and lending department, and he thinks he can get it done. He's 80% sure he can get it done by December 20th. And I go, fuck, well, okay. That's not only good enough for me, but that's the best news we've had so far. So I go, okay, yeah, 100%, let's go. So we provide him all the due diligence materials. He sends a needs list of everything that the lender is going to require from the different borrowers on the property, and about who the borrowers are, et cetera. So that's like resume, personal financial statement, how much money you have, where it is, what kind of accounts, how much debt do you have. It's, I think of it like a balance sheet for yourself. And then schedule of real estate. So what do you owe? What do you own, and what do you owe in terms of real estate? And so I send them that for me, and then I'm also hounding my other partners, and they sent it all. Each one of them sent to him their versions of that. So that's it. So I think we're rolling. So today we did the physical inspection. Keep in mind, we only have 7 days to do this, so it's all pretty chaotic. And my buddy calls me yesterday, and he goes, okay, what's our plan for physical inspection? What do you think? And I was pretty flippant about it, but it's true. Like, we already have the due diligence reports from the previous buyer, which I think can be relied on. The sellers had pretty meticulous reports. They put a new roof on the building. They replaced, the building's water heater. They, kind of just maintenance over the last 15 years. I go, look, we're buying a 60-year-old building, but the main systems, the panels are updated. The roof is new. The, building itself, we're going to see if we see any major cracks. We just got to go look at it. We don't need to hire an inspector. And I'm not saying that's a great strategy, but it's one that I've done whenever I buy typically, because I don't, when we've priced in the improvements or the cost of maintenance or stuff already into buying the deal, then I don't really need someone to tell me, well, you're going to need to replace the AC units in the next 3 to 8 years. Like, I know that. And, barring like any giant issues, which would mainly be foundation and roof, which are things, if you've seen a bunch of buildings, then there's, not that much in terms of like what you need to see. So obviously we need to see inside of the units. We need to see how the building's being maintained. We need to look in, under the building, around the building, in the panels. And that's what we did today. So we walked through all 8 units. It's an 8-unit apartment building. There's about 15,500 or 16,000 a month in rent. That's your gross annual income. And then there's a property management company that's been managing the property for the last 30 years, which we intend to keep. And you could just see, first thing you roll up, my buddy and I got lunch before. We drove around the neighborhood to get a sense of kind of what the neighborhood looked like, what it was close to, what do the other houses look like, how clean or dirty is it, how safe or unsafe is it, what do the people walking on the street look like, to get a real, it's that soft part of real estate where you're just trying to get like a block by block impression of the area and what you're buying. And so we drive around, it's clean. The first thing I noticed is no graffiti anywhere, which is very fucking unusual for LA. This building's in Inglewood, which is a bit different. Obviously Inglewood has like a famous reputation, but actually is a pretty dang nice area now. They've put billions of dollars into the neighborhood through SoFi Stadium where the Rams play, and the Kia Forum, where between the two of those, like most big shows in LA happen there as well. So you can just tell like the city is making a diligent effort to like make it a nicer, cleaner, safer, better place. And you see that, and like the yards were clean, and you don't have any of the homeless issues that you see around LA. No RVs, parking enforcements like everywhere, which are all things that like, you can buy a mediocre deal or a mediocre real estate. And if the return is high enough, you can try to justify to yourself why it's a good deal. But anything can happen, especially here in California with rental protections and stuff, or just the economy. If at the end of the day, you don't want to be stuck owning really shitty real estate. I don't want to be stuck owning shitty real estate. I'd rather own a mediocre deal, but great real estate. And, I'm not saying Inglewood is 10 out of 10 A+ real estate, but for our budget and kind of the return we're trying to get, and especially compared to a lot of the other deals we were looking at, it's good real estate, really good real estate. Building was like mid-century modern, had nice curb appeal, really good landscaping that had old trees that had been, you could just tell had been maintained and planted a long time ago. You could see when you walk through the different units, I think about 8 out of 10 of the units 6 out of 8 of the units were really well maintained. There's pride of tenantship or ownership or whatever you want to call it, where the tenants kept it clean, nice. It's a place that, you could see that they enjoyed living. There were a couple units that were not very nice, and those are problems for a future as you try to kind of improve the overall environment that your tenants are living in. You get rental growth out of that, and you just get less problems, less turnover. So those are kind of issues and things that you're looking for when you're walking through. But from a physical inspection standpoint, we're getting a sense of the neighborhood. We're getting a sense of the building itself, what kind of condition it's in, how it's been maintained, how cleanly it is or not. Kind of just looking behind the doors and the cobwebs and seeing like what's in there, what's required. And again, I'm not a multifamily expert, so I'm definitely learning, but I like to think of myself as pretty knowledgeable on real estate in general, and the same rules apply to buildings, and it's the same qualities that I look for in a house that I'm trying to buy. I own some single family homes and stuff, and I'm looking at things. Is this a place that I would live in a different life or a different world, or that I would want to live? And, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And so it checked all those boxes. So at 15, call it 15,000 a month, at 15,000 a month, multiplied by 12, you're looking at 180,000 a year. And we're using like a 35% expense ratio. So that's with maintenance, repairs, management, et cetera. So you take that gross revenue number and multiply it by 0.65, which is 65%. and you get 117,000, and then you divide that by the purchase price, and you get your cap rate, which I'm doing the numbers right now. Should be around a 6.5 cap. So I guess 15,000 is not the number. It must be 16. But you get the idea. 16,000 times 12, yada, yada. So the risk we're taking when we waive contingencies is that we don't have the loan. That's the risk that you have to take sometimes. And so that means one of two things. First, it means that your deposit's non-refundable. So your deposit's gone. The second thing that it means is if you don't get the loan in the time period, generally your liquidated damages is just the deposit, but there is technically specific performance where the seller could force you to buy it, which is not like an actual problem because we want to buy the building. So if the seller was really trying to get us to buy it, it would just mean he'd give us, another few days to buy it. So what's at really risk is completing the transaction within this year. And that's worth, to all the partners together, that's worth, call it a $600,000 tax liability. So to avoid that, you have two options. One is a bridge loan, which is basically companies that provide short-term financing at like hard money rates, meaning like 9.5%, 10%, which is the LOI that we got today. They'll provide like a 5-month loan, and then they charge a couple points when you buy it, meaning they'll charge a couple percent on the loan amount. So call it like $20,000 it costs you, but they can close in 2 or 3 weeks. So that's your backstop. And then you always have like a hard money loan as well, which again, hard money, they're going to want 3 or 4% transaction loan or transaction fees, and they're going to be at 10 or 12% or whatever. The key is, if you are doing a bridge loan or hard money loan, that you want something without prepayment penalties. That's why you're paying points up front. Because if they're going to charge you a 5% prepayment penalty and your plan is to refinance in 60 days, you just threw away $50,000 for nothing. So you want to be fairly careful to have a backstop. So we always run generally on our deals, if we're representing a buyer and we're buying a building, we run 2 loan processes at the same time. So we'll have like maybe a credit paper bank, which is like Bank of America, Chase, one of those like big banks that you've heard of, Wells Fargo, yada, yada. And then you'll generally have like a lower tier bank as a backup, but who is going to close. And in Southern California, we've got a lot of those. They usually are names that sound like fake banks. Like, what's an example? New Hope Bank of China, or really any bank with like a word that has nothing to do with banking in it. Freedom Alliance Banking, things like that. Those are generally like C paper or I don't know what the technical term is, but like I'd call it like black paper banks. Like they're very questionable of what exactly it is that they do in terms of banking and who they bank. But they're the right ones, that they're going to perform. So generally we'll run 2 processes. We'll have the A paper bank, and then we'll call it the black paper bank. And you run those 2 processes side by side, meaning you're paying a couple thousand in loan fees, but you have a backup option in case option A fails. So when you're working on a timeline where you have non-refundable money, you have to do that. And then in your back pocket, you always know you've got bridge, the hard money, whatever it is, set up. So throughout the transaction, banks can be asking for information, forms. You're responsive, and you're trying to get them to the point. You got to really be on top of your shit, where the second they need something, you're getting it from your clients or whoever it is. A big way that I think loans die is they die on the desk, I would say. They die on the desk of the borrower, who's not really responsive, not getting the right documents, sending it piecemeal, sending one thing, then one thing, not really providing everything that the bank needs to evaluate the project or the loan. And then they die on the desk of some back office where the person running the loan, whether that's the broker or, typically it's the acquisitions guy or the lender, the head lender guy at whatever bank, that they're not running it. They got too many deals. They're not running it carefully. And so it's sitting on someone's desk. Some banks just have like very strict bureaucratic processes where it has to go to underwriting or it has to go to environmental review. And it could be there for like weeks on Jimmy's desk, just sitting as the deals, and then maybe they have a request because they haven't looked at it for 2 weeks. Finally, the head guy calls them, I need that report. They look at it and they go, oh, fuck, I need XYZ. And that's when you get in a bad situation. So the goal from the brokerage standpoint is to not let it sit on anyone's desk for too long. But that's a fine art, because if you piss off the, lender or the broker from the lending side by bugging them every day or not providing the right stuff, then, they're not going to give you the material or the information, or, they're just not going to work that hard for you or answer what you need answered. So I try to work with people who I know get their shit done and don't need to be micromanaged. And who I know that it's their job to figure that stuff out. And I know that they will. There's lenders who, in the middle of a deal, they'll just go dark for like 2 weeks. It's happened to me on a couple of big deals. And this is like right prior to the close. You're calling the broker and like the broker, the loan broker's not answering the phone, and you text them and you email them. They just don't respond. And you're like, what the fuck, dude? I need to know what's going on with this property where the money is non-contingent and, 61,000 in the world of commercial real estate. It's just funny money. That's nothing. I've had deals where the client has $1 million non-refundable. And in the last 2 weeks of the deal before we're supposed to close, the loan broker or the bank just go silent. No response. You call them, you email them. I had one deal where I think it was $750,000 or $1 million, and went silent. And I was calling this guy and I was texting him and I was saying, I'm going to come to your fucking house. I'm going to come, I know where your kids go to school. I don't think I said that, but along those lines where I'm like, do not fucking ignore me. Tell me what's going on, and just nothing. And there's a few guys that are famous for this, and I'm not going to name them, but they're famous for that. And this one deal, it was like one day before close, and he calls me like the night before we were supposed to close. We still didn't have the money. And he calls me the night before and he goes, hey man, sorry, it's been really hectic, busy, whatever. Yeah, the loan's approved. It's all good. It's all good. They're going to wire tomorrow. Don't worry about it. And they did. And that's like, it's not ideal. You don't ideally want to work with those people. But they wouldn't be still around if they didn't mostly deliver. Sometimes you don't have a choice. Some deals, some properties, you don't get to pick who your loan broker is going to be, because you need something like, it's a shitty old building or it's a buyer that doesn't have great credit. Like, you got to go to who you have to go to. So I go to that guy when I got a complicated, difficult deal. And he always says to me, oh, how come you never bring any easy deals? And what I want to say is like, well, because it's so hard doing a hard deal with you. Why would I want to do a easy deal with you and make it hard? I mean, I'd like to say that, but I'm sure he gets easy deals from other people. But yeah, that's the reality. And then I got guys that, if this is a great user business and they've got a solid bank account and maybe they're looking to change their banking relationship, I might call like a buddy at a bank who's like in charge of their commercial lending and tell them about it and see if they'd pull out the red carpet for a new client. or I might call, I mentioned Carlos Sampson. If it's like an SBA, I would call him, or maybe Craig Sampson, his brother, depending on kind of the deal profile and what it is. But you have to have a good relationship with these guys. And, I always joke, I think a good part of good brokerage is you're like a fixer. You're the person that's driving the deal, but you also know where to call, who to call, and what buttons to push. And I think it's really easy to tell the difference between like great brokers and not great brokers based on, for me at least, the quality of their referrals and recommendations. Every now and then you get burned. It happens. Sometimes I give a referral and it doesn't go great. And I always try to preface to people, I've never worked with this person, or in my experience, he's been good, but I'm not guaranteeing anything if I'm unsure. But generally, if I need an electrician that can do this kind of work, tomorrow, then I know that guy. If I need someone that can grade a property, I need a concrete guy. I need an asphalt guy. I need a dirt guy. One of my clients is a dirt broker. So we've had times where it's like, we need to get rid of 50 truckloads of dirt. What do we do? And I got just the guy. And so it's having the right contacts and flushing people out and fleshing people out and figuring out who the right people are to talk to and the right people to transact with, like who's going to help you get deals done. And so you need a repertoire, and it takes a long time to build that. It also takes a long time I never, ever have taken money off of any referrals for any trade of any type, because I'd much rather have it in goodwill. I'd much rather them owe me a favor or owe me, just have a good relationship with these guys than I would to take money from their pocket. So it's not even to me that it's a conflict of interest. I mean, I'm sure there's ethical and moral boundaries, but to me, it's more, I'm not referring them because they give me money or whatever. I'm referring them because they're the best person for that job. And so, I try to make an effort to, their money's their money. It doesn't involve me. We use expediters, we use architects, engineers, all of that. And, I never put my finger in their pocket, and I try to keep it that way. But when you're buying a deal for yourself, it's very easy to make referrals to other people, but buying a deal yourself and knowing that being confident that you have all the people in place and that you can, perform is a different story. And so I think every time it's a bit of test of my courage and faith in my network and my knowledge when I buy a deal like this. And, losing $60,000 would be a big deal for me. I would not like to lose 60 grand. No one would, but it would be a huge hit. But if that's the risk that I have to take to get a deal, then I'm willing to do it. And you have to be to some extent. I'm not saying all deals, but when you're under a crunch and you're trying to find the right deal and the right deal presents itself, you have to take a certain amount of risk. Of course, though, it's calculated, right? I mean, this is not my first rodeo, not my first buffalo hunt. I know my way around enough to know that if I had to put a percentage number on my risk for that 60,000, it'd be very low. It'd be like below 20%, which is a number I could live with. A lot of people will tell you that wealth and fortunes are made off of a lot of singles and doubles. And that's not about home runs. And I think they're right. But I also think if I had to guess, the law of averages, I'm going to say 10% of deals probably make 90% of revenue. And it's the same, it's not even 80-20. I think it's 90-10. And it's the same thing for wealth and fortune building. Like, you can build a very good base on singles and doubles, but depending on what level you're trying to get at, you do need a few really good home runs. And that's something I think about, what level of wealth and success am I after? and what does it look like, and yeah, what is success, and is there a number? And as I've talked about in previous episodes, I've lived in a van and been fairly happy, actually really happy. And I've lived, in a different way and also been happy. I don't think, at least for me, that it's necessarily a monetary number. You have to have your needs met. And the amount of money that you make or wealth that you have at a minimum should be able to satisfy your needs. And your needs change as your life changes, based on you have kids and dependents. And it's one thing to live in a van down by the river when you're 22. It would be a different story 32 or 42 with kids and a family doing that with older parents and all that. So, I think to some extent, there's the world where, okay, what number do you need to satisfy your needs and the needs of the people that you care about? And then there's definitely a lot of number talking that's just a dick measuring contest, that I think a lot of people get stuck on this thing just to accumulate and to make money and to show that they have more, they're doing better than others. And there's like a huge portion, I think, of wealth building that's all relative and, keeping it, not just keeping up with the Jones, but where I don't know, I'm not sure I understand the point of having, and I'm not nowhere near this, but of having so much money that you could never spend it all, and you don't share it with people, and you don't give to, like a lot of these billionaires. I really don't understand. I think I do understand where they're coming from. They're coming from the point of like hoarding, that a lot of the tools and personality traits that it took to become a billionaire or a multi-millionaire are this ingrained in you, and they're the same tools and behaviors that you have once you're a billionaire. And so the same mentality I think a lot of these people had when they didn't have money, they still have when they have money. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was on a private jet once, and a good friend of our family and a really nice guy took me for high school graduation to Vegas on his jet. And he has one of those NetJet memberships where you basically pay $150,000 a year or whatever it is, and you have access to X amount of hours on the jet. And I remember we were getting off the flight, and when we were getting off the flight, he took his backpack and he took all the little single shot drinks that were on the jet. It was like a 12 passenger jet, and we were 3 people. And he took all the little, airplane alcohol things. And we got off, and I was with my dad at the time, and my dad said to the guy, he said, "Hey, let's call him Mike. Mike, why did you take the alcohol? You don't even drink." And he goes, "Well, they're free, aren't they? I paid for them." It's like, why is that guy is a billion with a B, billionaire. Why does he need the little, why does he want? And there's an aspect to wealth building where it's all, for him, I don't think it's necessarily comparative to others. I think there's a hoarding aspect to it, of where you're afraid, where you don't want to have, you get used to having this or looking at it. I just like to look at my bank account and see it, like that kind of mentality. But I have another client who said, what did he say? I've never seen a hearse roll. Oh, I butchered that. I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse at a funeral. Have you? And I think that's true too. Like, you can't take it with you. So defining like what that level of wealth and what it looks like, I don't know. I don't think it's a priority for me. I don't think it's necessarily, I want to hit this amount of money. I have friends that they're like, I want to hit 10 million by the time I'm 35, or, goals like that. And it's important to have goals. And I definitely had the goal of, I wanted to make, I wanted to make $1 million or be a millionaire by the time I was 30. And I've done that. But I don't think that if there's a certain number or a certain level where you don't, lifestyle wise, I don't enjoy shopping. I don't like going out, and there's only so many meals you can eat. And this is not me complaining about like, oh, woe is me. But I just mean, wealth for me and money has always been a tool and a means to living how you want to live, or living how I want to live. And being free and having freedom, I think to me is kind of the ultimate goal. If I'm 70 years old and I'm still cold calling, then I have done this thing wrong. Not that I don't like cold calling, but like I've said before, if I'm cold calling, it's because I want to be cold calling, not because I have to be. And wanting to do something and having to do it, even though the behavior might look the same, it's very different, the motivation, obviously. So I want to, I don't want to forget why I'm after these things and what the end goal is, but it does need to be defined more. And I think I'm going to do that in later episodes as I think about it more. But for the time being, I'm definitely willing to risk. I'm willing to take high risks. And I think you need to be at a certain age or in a certain life position. You need to be willing to take higher risks for maybe not a home run, but like a double or a triple. Like you need to be willing to do that. If you're not, I think you can also get to a really comfortable level of wealth and success. But it's very different. Like I love Reddit. I'm on all kinds of forums. And I love the Fat Fire forum and Fire forum, which is like financial independence, retire early, and Fat is like the rich version of that. And there's Chubby Fire, which is between Fire and Fat Fire, and Chubby Fire is like for like millionaires who are not like really there. Fat Fire is like they'll post $15,000 a night hotels, and everyone on there wants to retire by the time they're 40. I'm not that. I don't want to retire in 8 years. I like my job. I like what I do. I like working. And if it weren't this, it would be something else. I've always worked, and I would like to keep doing that. But I do think, having independence is for me a strong goal, and having the ability to choose what you do. If you really hate your job every day and you hate your life and you have no choices because you're financially constrained, it's hard. Obviously it's hard, but not just hard. There are people, let me say this, the distinction I'm trying to make, and then I'll quit rambling. The distinction I'm trying to make is there are people that make millions of dollars a year who are still trapped by lifestyle, that live the same exact way that a 20-year-old with a $40,000 a year job live, in the sense that they're on a fucking hamster wheel, and they stay on that hamster wheel as they get older, and their tastes get more expensive. They call it lifestyle creep. The subscriptions become more and more expensive. Your dinners become more and more expensive and more frequent. Your carrying costs, your nut becomes bigger, and people get really absorbed in lifestyle, and it's easy. And I've seen it happen to friends. I've seen it happen to family. It's easy to get trapped by lifestyle, no matter how much money you're making or how many deals you've made. And that is not, to me, a super desirable life. I do not want to live a life where I'm competing with others for financial success. I want to compete with myself, and I want to use others to push me. But ultimately, I think that, it is personal, and yeah, it's a battle between you and yourself and nobody else. I'll leave off there. I'll update as we get further on this deal. I will be waiving in a couple of days, and in a couple of podcasts, I'll either be talking about how dumb I was to say that I knew enough to waive on a deal like this without having the financing. And I will tell you if I see something grand, and we'll find out.